Hi, welcome.
Hi.
Hi. I'm so excited to share with you all.
Sorry, Amanda. I don't know. It just all of a sudden started to go a little crazy here. Doesn't usually do that. Should probably start over. Ugh. Okay. I think it's better. Oh my God.
So I'm just really excited to introduce you all to Kara. She's in the Prosperous Goddess group right now, and she is a graduate of my longer Urban Goddess immersion from, you were in my first LA course. So
Yeah.
that was, I think, the spring of 2015, right?
Yeah.
Years ago. And Kara, I feel like we'll just kind of have a conversation here. And
Cool.
I feel like what we're going to talk about is something that's going to just be really interesting for any woman to learn more about the worlds of technology, business, feminine energy, and cryptocurrencies are kind of the things we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that I love like having you as a part of the Urban Goddess community and someone in my life, because I feel like you are you're someone who knows about things that are just so vastly different than the things I know about. So it's like I operate in this like spiritual personal development world, and you really operate in this like tech world that's just so foreign to me. And I love how you and to really see, like in the past several years, to really watch how you have like been in that masculine world and then taken this kind of the feminine energy and the kind of work we've done and work that you've done with other practitioners, and how you've really started to like weave that in with this other world and created really cool stuff like the fuel tank and feminine intelligence. And I feel like I would love for you to just share a little bit about what you do, because I feel like I'm not even that clear on what it is that you do like in your day-to-day job outside of like the fuel tank and stuff. So just, can you just lay it on us? Tell us a little bit about your world. And
Awesome. My parents have no idea either after all this time. I just started thinking about that. So it's definitely, not something that's, if you're not in it, it's kind of hard to understand it. So I think I'll start maybe at the beginning. I'll keep it quick, but just to give you guys context in terms of like, I guess the integration of the masculine and the feminine, and also how that's played out in terms of like purpose and society and all of those things that are interwoven that we're all dealing with. So I had an undergrad degree in finance. It was a thing back then before technology existed that, I was pretty advanced in school, and my parents were pretty, you guided me in that way. And, I was a driven little kid and really was a go-getter always. And so my first career was on Wall Street in New York. And I was doing a cool, pretty cool for Wall Street. I was doing what they call equity research. So this is where you go and you follow certain industries. My boss would speak on TV talking about trends, and I would be doing the spreadsheets and writing the reports. And it was very exciting and, very grueling and challenging, and not really a feminine place at all to work. And I was probably a pretty sensitive kid, like most people are, person. And I started to kind of, I didn't know how to navigate the world, so I really kind of sort of shut down my feeling space, and didn't really do this, intentionally, but it just happened as a result of trying to protect myself and my energies. And I remember actually people calling me the ice queen in the office, which is so funny now. I didn't know about it till later. And I think it was just, again, a self-protection kind of thing. And as I left Wall Street, I went to work at Calvin Klein, and I was working in their corporate office as a financial analyst, and then started the MBA program at NYU in the fall of 2008. So that was right when the market crashed. It was a really interesting time to go to school because, especially in New York, in finance, and, we would go to class, and every day, every class, the teachers would say, like, who's lost their jobs this week? And it would be a quarter of the class, And I was no longer working in banking, but it was a fun time to see people trying to navigate, okay, where are we going to go from here? Finance really aren't our options anymore. We're not, doesn't look very successful in that. So that's when the upswing of entrepreneurship and technology really took off. And I was already sort of exploring that world and took a big leap into working in startups and marketing and all the more fun stuff I felt. And with that came a lot of uncertainty, and it really personally, it was a changing point for me where I actually had a lot of panic attacks and anxiety. It all kind of surfaced at that and escalated to that point because I had been so removed from my body and in such a thinking space. I've actually felt a lot that I had like this elephant pressing on my chest all the time. I had a hard time even fully breathing. And I'm really grateful for all of that experience because it helped me jump off into the spiritual space. So I jumped into a program called Urban Zen, which was Donna Karen's program in New York. It was a year-long program where we studied yoga and meditation and breath work and essential oils, and it was so foreign to me. But I think it was like, because it was a year long, I was able to really feel into embodying that. Early days of that, but that was in 2012, 2011. And then I graduated from business school and went and worked at a company called Mind Valley in Malaysia. And if some of you might be familiar with Mind Valley, you know, it's in the personal development space. And when I was there, really trying to figure out like, what's my purpose? And a lot of us were trying to call in what our dharmas are, meaning our kind of our purpose. And I remember getting this flash of inspiration while I was sitting in a coffee shop where it was just an intuitive hit, and it said, you're going to run an accelerator for women. And I really didn't know what that would be. You know, in the tech world, an accelerator is generally like a 3-month program that you go into and you receive several $100,000 and they help you with your startup. And that didn't seem like, I mean, it was not really at a stage in my career where that was plausible. So I kind of put that in the back seat, told some friends about it. And I was like, that's interesting. And then fast forward to 2017, that's when the whole accelerator of the feminine came back in. And in between 2012 and 2017, I wasn't working in technology. So that's the tech Silicon Valley world. Most recently, I was VP of growth at a company that does mobile app analytics and marketing. So we're software that goes into mobile apps, and we do a lot of tracking. And, you know, I would say that I've seen a lot of positive things come out of the tech world, which are, you know, new tools to help us advance, you know, and do less work and automate things. And there's a lot of theories out there, like Peter Diamandis has the book Abundance, where, you know, in 20, 30 years, when everything is so automated, we're going to have a lot more time to create and play, right? Which is really exciting. On the flip side, there are things that I see that are not really being done in a feminine way, which is some of the things I want to touch into today. So like, you know, if our current paradigms are set up in a more masculine world, and then the indicators of what success is, that's what I want to touch on, because I'm still exploring this myself. But if you think about economics, if you remember any micro or macroeconomics classes you took, I was always really bored by them actually. But you know, there's always indicators, right? KPIs, key performance indicators. And these are ways that we measure things. And we generally have like several key things. So everybody's on the same page of success, what success is like. And so I can go into like historically what these have looked like for society and business and where we are going to be going. And I think this community is a part of change makers, that we're starting to push up against what these KPIs are in different industries and how we can implement them in our careers, in our industries, and within ourselves.
Awesome. I just want to touch on that for a moment. I love this. So KPI, key performance indicators, is this way that basically it's like the yardstick of what success is, right?
Exactly.
It's like, just to put it in layman's terms. So it's really like what the yardstick has been, and the fact that now we're in a transition period that you're experiencing, you're seeing in the business and tech world, that's saying, no, we're actually going to use a new yardstick to measure what success actually is, or how we define what success is. Yeah.
Exactly.
And you're seeing it move in a direction, I'm guessing, that feels like it's more friendly to the feminine, and maybe more supportive of that. Or what do you think?
Not really. I think that
Okay.
I'm not seeing that yet. I think that's where we would like to go, and but I want to give like a little framework into historically, you know, what we measure as a society for success, right? So if you look back in like the 60s, you know, this is when we're starting to be able to aggregate data. There's census data information, and we see that, you know, a lot of the feminine has been involved heavily in action related items like running a household and, you know, dealing with children and family, while the men were the breadwinners, right? So the problem was that the government started to put the women's work into more welfare related programs, right? So child rearing, nutrition, healthcare, those things were kind of subsidiary to the more masculine, just weren't making a living, right? Mm-hmm. So that kind of split us apart from there. And then in the 80s, that's when it really started, you know, around Reagan time, it was all about GDP. So this is what you probably hear about, like, how is the economy doing on the US and global perspective, where we're competing with other countries on our overall GDP levels, which basically are gross domestic product. How much are we growing? And then, you know, this is where you see unbridled growth happening just to hit that top line KPI number. And it doesn't really take into consideration how that's affecting people's wages, how it's affecting people's happiness levels, welfare. You know, it's very, very masculine. And I think that's where we're seeing, you know, at a corporate and, well, more at a government level, we're starting to see evolved countries really realize that's probably not the best indicator, because we're doing a lot of harm with that. And so one example I really love is the new Prime Minister of New Zealand, who's a female, and she's 37. She's come in and she's started a new well-being index for their country. So this is where it's like, okay, well, we actually have our success metrics are based around things like, what's our rate of child poverty? What are the happiness levels, basic income levels, right? Are we affecting cultural issues? So, I mean, this is a huge new framework, but super exciting to see a country like New Zealand be able to implement this. They're smaller than we are, but, you know, hopefully we'll start to take some notes from that, because interestingly enough, I think in the past, we've seen where there's the assumption that, you know, with conscious capitalism or impact related, you know, B corporations that have triple bottom lines, they assume that, you know, you're not going to perform as well. Well, actually, studies show in some industries, companies that take in this conscious framework can outperform 10 times better than those that don't. And outperform even at the bottom line, which just means how much money are you making at the end of the day. So that's how it's been set up in the past, and that's at a government level, right? So what I see in an industry level is then corporations, you know, are starting to implement this conscious capitalism style. B Corps are a company structure I mentioned, where you might see on a company's website they're a B Corp. That means they might have a triple bottom line where they take a percentage of their income and give out to others, right? So I think I didn't finish with my where I'm at now, but that might lead into this kind of in the corporate level. Last year, I had a download about I was reading a piece in Vanity Fair that was profiling Elon Musk. I'm sure you guys are aware of Elon Musk, and he's, you know, very interested in the space of AI. And so this is kind of a conversation around technology and these growth KPIs that are just kind of happening because it's very exciting that we can, have all this new tech coming out. There isn't really any consciousness about how quickly this can escalate. Did you want to ask me something, or?
Well, I was just going to say, for people that are like not in this world, like just things like AI is artificial intelligence. I mean, I think most people know that, but like listening might not if this isn't on their radar. And Elon Musk is the founder, or like owner of Tesla, and he's just very active in the entrepreneurial tech world and like one of the leaders.
I would totally recommend, checking him out. He is a man, but that's another thing.
Okay.
That's okay. I think it's great that, we as women are really immersing ourselves into science and tech as much as possible. I know if follow your excitement, but we're going to see all these worlds merging, and it's really exciting time. So to stay up just on, follow some science and tech news. And so artificial intelligence, it really sounds scary, but it's really just basically automating things, right? So in a few years, we're going to see 10% of the current workforce is not going to have a job because of these new automated tools, starting with drivers, truck drivers, and people that are doing Ubers. In the next few years, we'll see the self-driving cars. That's an example of AI. So the question is, are we doing this consciously? We're at a really interesting point in our time, and I have the feeling a lot of us were born with certain gifts that are really important to bring in right now to society and the world and the future of the planet. And it gets pretty deep, but and I don't like to live in fear, but there are certain tech founders, the founder of Skype and others, they met on retreats and they talk about this, and they say we have about 3 to 7 years to infuse consciousness into technology, or things might not play out so well. So I think it's really great for us to be having these conversations and thinking about how we can implement these. It's really about consciousness, right? So feminine qualities that I think a lot of us innately hold, which are co-creation, collaboration, empathy is a huge one. Interdependence. This is how we lived tribally long time ago. And we hold the keys. It's just a matter of unlocking them and reframing what we've probably been programmed this in our lifetimes that have not really made it very comfortable to live in that way, right? So I can get into some practices later in a little bit about like how we actually can embody some of these FI qualities, feminine intelligent qualities, in our lives and in our businesses. And that's the starting point.
Yeah, so I just want to, unfortunately my garbage truck is outside right now, so I don't know how loud that is, but just to kind of recap like where we're at in the conversation, because we just talked about so many things. It's just this idea that really we're in this crucial moment where technology is, the development of it and the advancement of it is just so rapid. And the capabilities of artificial intelligence, these things that are being created, are so powerful that it's vital. Like whether we have a consciousness infused in it, and it feels like my sense knowing you is that you're one of these people that really has a kind of a foot in both worlds. You've had this deep background in economics, in technology, and now really been moving more and more into the spiritual conscious world. And you brought in, it's the first time I ever heard this concept of FI as like the female intelligence, or do you call it feminine intelligence or female?
Yeah, we moved to feminine. Yep.
Feminine intelligence, as a way of, and not to in any way like say that there's no value in masculine intelligence, but it's something been so kind of imbalanced in how we've been moving in that for so many thousands of years, that now it's time to say, okay, where are these qualities of empathy? How can this be infused into this growing technological landscape. And you've created something like, so you created, you have We Are the FI is the website for this. How would you describe what that is? I know I'm
No,
a
yeah.
but,
Well, I want to show this really quick diagram. I know we are jumping around for people, so I appreciate you guys hanging in there and listening to this. And a lot of it's, a little bit heavy, but this is a good conversation for us all to have. So, as I mentioned, Elon and this download hit that I had last year. Take a look at this visual. I was reading this article in Vanity Fair, and it was profiling Elon Musk and his concerns about AI and the future AI apocalypse. So, where these things could be going. And if we're not I think he's invested $10 million of his own money to try to contain and put some consciousness and some restrictions around where this world might be going. And you can see here, this diagram shows people that are concerned on the left. So, the late Stephen Hawking, Bill Gates, they're saying, hey, we should be a little definitely concerned about this. And as we move it around, you see Larry Page from Google, Mark Zuckerberg, he's not that worried. He's saying, hit the gas, we're good. What really stuck out and resonated for me, which I'm sure you might be able to see here, is the lack of women in this visual. And so I received a hit. That's how I got the FI was, okay, it's not AI, it's FI, right? Feminine intelligence. And how do we accelerate that? How do we accelerate these consciousness practices and ways of being? And so I went through a little bit of a process over a period of months and trying to figure out how can we get those numbers up, because these are the people that are kind of dictating the future of the planet. Some of us might be more aware of that than than others, but there's different ways around it. So we can say, all right, well, we need to have more women in science, and tech, and engineering. That's the STEM world that you hear. And there's a lot of people doing great work around that, trying to get more women in those fields. And interestingly, I was reading a book, listening to Brotopia, which is a new book that came out recently. And there's some interesting stats about actually in the 80s, around the time of the Apple computer first coming out, over 40% of the computer science graduates were women. So then it dropped to, in the 90s and 2000s, to about 20%, where it holds now. So the question is, why did that happen, right? Like, what was that huge drop? And so a lot of people would say, there's studies showing that really it's just the lack of empathy that exists in that sphere has just been really uncomfortable for women. So that's one way we can kind of try to balance that out, is having more women in those fields. But again, it comes back to having more empathy in them, so more women are attracted to it.
Right. One of the things I want to ask you about, because there's just so much, obviously, we can cover in a short amount of time, but one of the things I really wanted to touch on with you too is just this concept of a new economic future. Because really, like, for the women that are in Prosperous Goddess, like, we're talking about prosperity in all its forms, but you can't ignore that money is a part of that. And that is, we've got the shift in technology that's happening with AI, but we're also in a shift around really how we define money in many ways, right?
Yeah.
Like, one of the worlds that I don't know a whole lot about, but I've become increasingly interested in understanding, and I know you know a lot about, is the cryptocurrencies. Like the blockchain technology, and most people are familiar with, why am I forgetting it now? What's Bitcoin,
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard women speak about, a feminine economic future, and the fact that there's some ways in which these new currencies can be like that there's like a feminist opportunity in here somewhere, or there's a way that they can be used that can be really empowering for women. Yeah. And so I'm curious to hear what some of your insights are on that.
Yeah, so I think the whole idea around why this was started is about decentralization. So that means lack of ownership. So the reasons why we have a blockchain, which is basically just a framework for by which things can be traded and exchanged, is so that there are not single owners. You know, banks are they're the biggest example of ownership that we all have to get to and, you know, pay interest to and all of that. So when we have blockchain, we're able to, these systems are set up where it's more decentralized. So there isn't one single owner. I'm sorry, my computer's.
The computer's like excited about this. It's like,
all this energy.
Talking about blockchain.
Okay. So that's the theory, right? And basically we're able to people can start different coins on these. They can create their own coin. I've seen some attempts to create a female coin. So basically someone says, okay, they create this paper and they say, this is what the value is for a certain coin. And then people associate a certain value with that. And then they make investments, and they can do it on different existing blockchains, like Ethereum is one that's very common in Bitcoin. So then it's basically just a straight supply and demand game where people are able to, we say, okay, well, I think this female coin is going to be, you know, super successful because of X, Y, and Z. I want to invest this amount, and it's just an act of trading, right? Similar to the stock market, although the stock market has one single exchange. Okay, so it's complicated. I don't want to
this is something I've been trying to wrap my head around a little bit, because I understand for the most part that Bitcoin has been like, yeah, kind of like an investment that people are making, just like they would in the stock market. And it's like, and some people have been really critical about it because it's like, it's just this almost like a shell game kind of thing, or like the people that got in early, then they're going to build up, like it's going to be worth something. But that Bitcoin itself isn't actually have a value, except that you can buy it and then trade it later at a higher valuation and make money. But we're still talking about money in the same old way, right? It's still dollar bills at the end of the day. And that's what I'm having a hard time understanding. When does it actually transition into something that's not just like a speculation, like a speculator,
That's such a great point. And it's something I've grappled with in the past too, because I'm like, why am I not attracted to this? You know, and a lot of women are not, actually, because they're not seeing like the real value that's being created. Exactly. It feels just like the stock market. And like, it's actually one of the most heavily male dominated spaces out there. And it was a lot of sharks putting in money, you know, losing a lot of money, and it's all speculatory. So I think you hit it on the head. And for those of you who haven't participated yet, don't feel bad or that you're missing the boat. Okay. So since we're a spiritual group here, I think it's interesting to talk about where we're headed though in this space, and some new frameworks that have come out in the last couple of months. And one is called Holochain. So I will send it to you guys after, we can share it. And I would really recommend checking it out, because it's a framework based on nature. So they are fully decentralized, where there is no single owner, and you're able to take ownership of, you share the internet. You can have these physical devices where you can share cloud storage, and that gets pretty technical too. But the coins, so there's always a coin layered on top of a chain, a framework. And that's what blockchain was. But now this is where it wasn't fully decentralized, because there was miners, people actually mining these coins and using physical resources to make them. It's crazy.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, because that was the other criticism that really came in so strongly around Bitcoin and the blockchain, was that it was like destroy, like if it were to actually continue to grow at the rates that they would anticipate or want, that it would be really destructive to the environment because of the amount of energy it takes, because it's a bunch of computer calculations that are having to happen every time someone would make like an exchange, right?
Exactly.
The mining process, right? So how is holochain different than the blockchain in that regard?
Right. So there is no physical component to this other than you can purchase these holo devices. I think they're a couple $100, and they're basically little servers that you can have in your home, and you can sell storage so people can access the internet via that. So it's basically computing storage that you can sell and trade, that's making it more digitized than having to have full coins. And like, we're exploring developing an FI coin off of Holochain. And so say we just want to have, 100,000 women that are in the FI community, and we only want to have this coin for us because we associate value with our community. Other people don't. They might not know what that is and not want to participate in it. That's fine. And we can create our own values on this framework. So we can say, like, I have the app, the Field Tank, for example, which is a community of teachers like yourself, where everyone's, teaching different classes, and you can currently purchase them for, purchase a subscription or purchase a class, and you can pay, currency for it, money, but in the coming month, probably a year or so, you'll be able to pay with these FI coins. And so we could say, Amanda's prosperity course was so valuable, I want to pay her 20 FI coins. And then that's actually, it becomes worth real value when we have a large enough network of women that are in this exchange community, where you can then give me an FI coin for giving a consultation on something, right? You need to have enough people in a network for the value to be really attributed, right? So in the future, which I think is so exciting, is if you've seen the episode of Black Mirror where they have like score, this woman has a score next to her head, like she's got a 4 out of 5 score based on like her dateability or something. It's kind of scary, but we're going to have different scores and coins associated with different communities that we're part of. So you could have like 10 different values and communities that you're a part of, like the FI community, where you're changing, coins for things around, like spirituality. You could be a part of another coin that's like you're sharing things based on, maybe child rearing and all of that stuff. So we're going to have, anyone could start their own coin. You just need to have enough people within it. So I would say at the basic level, check out these new frameworks. They're coming out. They're new. They're more feminine, like Holochain, that are modeled off of nature. And I have the feeling women have been out of the picture for the most of us for this blockchain and Bitcoin experience, because it didn't feel right for us to participate in something that was just being traded, right? When there's now going to be real value shown, and in a model that feels fair and distributed.
Right. Interesting. It's really interesting to contemplate this different models and different ways of valuing services, valuing anything. And it feels like we're just stepping into the very beginnings of what's possible. And I think in some ways, maybe my sense is we can't even totally comprehend where it would go. Like my mind's wanting to go, okay, well, like that's cool. But like, then what's going to happen is, is our money, dollar like system going to be affected by this or changed? And it sounds like we can't even really project what that would look like at this point.
There's probably people who are more experts than me at this, but I think people predicted that blockchain was going to be it, and actually it's looking likely that it won't be, and it's going to be some of these new models.
Right. That's great. So what's one takeaway that you would impart to any women that are just like interested in engaging with like some of what you brought up today?
Yeah. Well, thank you for listening. I feel like I was a little bit all over the place and hopefully not too heavy, but I think that I want to talk on the personal level, like how we can start to enhance our own FI qualities, and it starts with us. So I've started to notice like things that, as your awareness starts to increase, how I am interacting with my colleagues or people in similar industries and such, where I really love the expansion and contraction feeling that we have for the prosperity course. Like, that's been huge for me. I don't, every morning I'll admit I'll wake up, and I wake up sort of in a semi-fear state of like, oh gosh, scarcity. How am I going to get the money for all these projects? I'm alone, meh. Like, it doesn't feel always that great, especially when you're starting something. Then I do the practice and I'm like, oh, I feel supported. I feel alive. I feel positive. And so on top of that, as you're embodying that prosperity feeling, which doesn't just mean calling it money, right? It's just how are we being in the world? Notice when you're making business decisions, whether you're expanded or contracted. So I have multiple things come up a day where it's like, oh, I've just learned about this new online classroom for spiritual courses that someone else has created. Like, my initial feeling is, oh man, like, but wait. And then I'm like, wait, that feels like competition. That feels like scarcity. That feels like ownership. And it doesn't feel good in my body. I feel very contracted. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to breathe. I'm going to sit into this. I'm going to think about, how can I support this person? How can I support this mission? Take myself out of it. Of course, I want the fuel tank to do great, and it will, because it's in my purpose and it's in alignment. I also want this other person to do well. Actually, as I'm saying it, my body feels totally different right now. So I go as far as sending this person a text and say, great job, like, why don't you come in the fuel tank? I'll give you a free membership. Like, and then it just neutralizes everything. And that's how we get back into balance and harmony. And that
feels so good. That almost makes me want to cry, honestly, because it's just, that's the shift, when we talk about, just like, when you're talking about the measurements of success in like New Zealand versus like what this GDP idea, or this old paradigm of scarcity and competition versus like, here's somebody who actually has a similar vision as you. And so it's like you're aligned in ultimately what you're wanting to bring to the world, and the strength of like being a woman, a human, and being able to really lead from that place, and feeling into the possibility of what our world can be like if we combine efforts in that way and support one another when we have the same vision instead of competing and contracting. So beautiful. I love that. I love that example. And I love just feeling into, yes, is what I'm feeling right now. Am I having a thought that's creating contraction? And how does it feel? Does it match up to that expansion when I take this other action or thought? Exactly. Beautiful. I love feeling into how women can use that to just be navigating through their day-to-day business decisions and any of the things that come up in our life, that could be in the dating world, or, who knows?
I know.
That like thing. And we're just really inviting someone in. Beautiful. Kara, thank you so much for taking time with us today.
Oh, this is so fun.
I feel like we need to have like 10 more conversations. There's so much to talk about. But really, so I'm just always so fascinated by this world that you operate in and the things that you know. And
well, I'm grateful that our worlds are merging, and reach out to me anytime, anybody listening that wants to have a conversation about how we can implement these things into your business, into your industries. We're actually working on, I'm a group of 7 women that we're putting together some new protocols for the tech industry. Here's how to actually try to implement this. It's a huge endeavor, but the goal is, let's try to think about that in our own industries. Look, the entertainment industry is doing it now, where they've got well-known people that are saying, I'm not going to do your movie unless you have certain things that you're hitting in diversity, fair, and equity, and all that. So it's possible, and then again, at your own level too. And so I think this might turn into being a class. And there's a lot of classes on the Field Tank that I really enjoy about activating your soul consciousness and your purpose. I think that's really you know, an interesting thing to feel into as much as possible around purpose too.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm going to share, when I share this video with the women, you know, the information for the Field Tank and for feminine intelligence too, so women can become more familiar with these great platforms that you've created, and welcome women into the Field Tank. It's such an amazing space where we didn't really talk about this, but just before we end, just let women know that Kara's created this app. And on this app, we have all these incredible teachers, primarily women, but now men I know are going to start coming in, leading video activations and classes. And there's a community on there too, like a social network. And I'm in there, so it's really, really fun. So I'll give women, you know, the links to check all of that out.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you, Kara.
Thank you, Amanda. Thanks for doing this. Bye, everybody.